The training material that you are about to see is intended as a general overview of the subject being presented. This training is not being offered as an in-depth course and may not address all aspects of the subject matter being discussed. Always follow your plant's policies and procedures, which may differ from the video. MTS training videos frequently feature exercise questions designed to test the knowledge and awareness of the employees viewing the training. When the question mark symbol appears in the corner of the screen, you may choose to press pause on your video player and discuss the exercise question.
I was working on a roll-off bin that we just bought, and we needed to fabricate the upper rollers, extend them. So I was using a skinny wheel on a brand new DeWalt grinder in which these turned 10,000 RPM a minute. I did have on a face shield with safety glasses on underneath, but as I was cutting with the new blade, it had actually pinched in the metal, and it forced the grinder to fly out, and it ran all the way down my face mask, which I had on, in which with the broken cutting wheel, and knocked my hard hat and everything off. I mean, I can't emphasize on how lucky I was to have this shield on. And you can see where it was at. It would have started at my eyeball and went all the way down my face. I mean, it could have been a really, really serious injury. So I used to not be so easy to put this stuff on. And they're super crazy about how much and how safety everything is around here. I follow directions, and that day I'm extremely glad that I had all that PPE on. So take the time, do it right, and it could save your life, your face, your fingers. I still get to go home as pretty now as I was then.
The incident proves that personal protective equipment, or PPE, is not only necessary in our industry, but that it works and will prevent serious injuries when worn correctly. This training will outline the important elements required for PPE training, which include what PPE is necessary, when PPE is necessary, how to don, doff, adjust, and wear PPE, limitations of PPE, and proper care, maintenance, and useful life of PPE.
Pretty much all jobs on site require PPE for personal safety. Worst case scenario, you could get seriously hurt, squashed, killed.
To assure that you receive the optimal protection that PPE offers, it is important to know what PPE is necessary when performing your job tasks throughout the day. Employers are required to conduct hazard assessments to determine potential hazards that an employee may encounter while performing the job. Once hazards are identified, a system referred to as the hierarchy of controls is used and must be implemented to eliminate or reduce the hazard to an acceptable level. In some cases, hazards cannot be adequately controlled through elimination, substitution, engineering, or administrative controls, and as a result, personal protective equipment, or PPE, is relied upon to reduce the exposure to the identified hazard. As an example, let's take a look at the basic task of sorting scrap. Employees are constantly exposed to laceration hazards when sorting scrap. Since the need to handle scrap cannot be eliminated because it is not practical to only allow equipment to handle scrap, employees must be protected from the hazard. There is a variety of personal protective equipment, and it must be selected to match the hazards present and offer the appropriate protection. Hazard assessments need to be reviewed periodically to determine any change in conditions, equipment, or operating procedures, and to evaluate the effectiveness of existing hazard control measures and PPE requirements.
PPE it saved me from a bump on my head, and gloves have saved me from receiving serious lacerations in the past. I once saw a guy jump out of a truck onto a nail that went through his boot because he didn't have steel-lined boots, and the nail pierced his foot.
Now that you know what PPE is required, it is equally important to know when PPE is necessary. Required PPE must be identified in job procedures. These job procedures are typically written for all common tasks performed and are a step-by-step guide on how to perform each task safely. They include the hazards and identify what PPE is required to provide protection from the hazards. However, many injuries still occur each year due to employees not wearing the proper PPE. Examples of this include wearing no gloves, the wrong gloves for the task, or wearing only safety glasses when a face shield is required. Recently, an employee was in the process of cutting a thick piece of metal while using a grinder with the wrong cutting wheel. As he was cutting, the wheel bound up, causing it to explode, sending fragments into his upper lip and nose. The employee was not wearing a face shield as required when operating this type of tool. To assure your PPE offers the optimal protection, always make sure you are wearing the proper PPE for the hazards you face. If the proper PPE is not selected, the likelihood of injury increases significantly. Can you identify the PPE hazard in this scene? The employee is not wearing the proper gloves while sorting wire. Be sure you are always protected by wearing the proper PPE.
Make sure that your PPE is close-fitting, not baggy, always done up, hard hat adjusted so that it sits comfortably on your head but not too tight. If you don't wear your PPE correctly, it could result in it flailing about, being caught on machinery, being even caught in machinery, which in turn can drag you in.
Unfortunately, even while wearing the proper PPE, you can still be injured if the PPE is not worn correctly. For this reason, it is extremely important that you understand the correct procedures for donning, doffing, adjusting, and wearing all required PPE. Hard hats, when worn correctly, provide protection against falling or flying objects. The rigid shell deflects blows to the head, and the suspension system acts as a shock absorber. Unless otherwise specified by the manufacturer, the brim must be worn in the front. Be sure to adjust the suspension so the hard hat sits comfortably but securely on your head. An employee was cleaning up around a loft storage area when a support for the loft came loose and struck the employee's hard hat. It struck the brim, knocking it off the employee's head. Fortunately, the employee was wearing his hard hat with the brim in front, and he did not sustain any injuries. If the employee was wearing his hard hat with the brim in back, the support would have struck him in the face and caused a number of serious injuries. It is critical to always wear your hard hat and wear it properly while you are working in areas where there is potential for falling objects, overhead work, or bump hazards. Safety glasses with side shields will provide appropriate protection against most hazards. However, they must fit properly in order to provide the proper protection. Be sure that they fit snugly on your face and there are no large gaps between your face, the frame of the safety glasses, and the side shields. Such gaps can allow debris to enter your eyes. Safety glasses must be ANSI Z87.1 certified. Hearing protection protects your hearing against high noise levels. When hearing protection is not worn correctly, it offers very little protection, and you still may experience hearing loss over time. Make sure earplugs are inserted properly into your ears, and ear muffs cover your entire ear. Cut-resistant sleeves offer protection against laceration hazards. Many facilities require employees to wear them while at picking stations, sorting wires, and working around the baler. However, many lacerations still occur because the sleeves are not worn properly. An employee was working around a baler. He was not paying attention to his surroundings and he brushed up against a piece of scrap that was sticking out of a bale. He was not wearing his cut-resistant sleeves correctly and he sustained a laceration on his arm. In order to gain the full protection that sleeves can offer, be sure to select the appropriate sleeve. They must be pulled up to their full length and never pushed down around your wrist. If they are too loose or become stretched out, notify your supervisor and obtain a new pair. Gloves can offer protection against injuries such as lacerations, punctures, burns, and chemical exposures. But not all gloves are created equal, so it is essential to wear gloves specifically designed for the hazards found in your work area. As your tasks change throughout the day, take the time to change your gloves to ensure your hands stay protected. In our industry, safety footwear is essential, but it must be worn properly and be in good condition in order to provide you with the proper protection. Make sure your footwear is laced all the way up and tied tightly enough to fit securely on your feet. It is also important to inspect your footwear. Recently, an employee was performing hot work, which generated some slag. The slag rolled off and entered the side of the employee's safety boot, which caused a burn on the employee's foot. During the investigation, it was determined that the safety boot was damaged, which allowed the entry of the slag. Before putting on your safety footwear, inspect it for tears, cracks, or missing laces. Any problems can leave you open for a potential injury. Be sure to obtain a new pair whenever such issues are detected. PPE is designed to provide you protection, but only when it is worn properly. So at the beginning of every shift, make sure you are donning, wearing, and adjusting your PPE properly.
Your hard hat will not protect you from something really heavy that's falling from height that you possibly didn't see. It'll give you a minimum of protection, but it obviously won't stop you getting a serious head injury. Your PPE will protect you from most hazards. If you have the correct PPE, then you'll be protected from acids, difficult fabrics, but the correct PPE for that occasion must be required and worn.
While PPE is necessary to provide protection against workplace hazards, it is very important to understand that certain PPE has limitations. For example, safety glasses provide very good protection against minor airborne and projectile particles and must be worn at all times. But in certain situations, they are not enough. For tasks such as grinding and handling chemicals, a face shield must be worn in addition to safety glasses to offer additional protection. Did you know that your hard hat is only designed to resist the impact of an 8-pound object dropped 5 feet or a 2-pound object dropped 20 feet onto your head? Never put yourself in a situation where you are exposing yourself to overhead falling hazards that may exceed the limitations of your hard hat. Cut-resistant gloves provide very good protection against lacerations while working with and handling sharp objects. Unfortunately, cut-resistant gloves are not cut-proof and in most cases offer very little protection against punctures. It is extremely critical to understand the limitations of cut-resistant gloves and be sure to not handle sharp objects in a fashion where the gloves may fail or when exposed to potential punctures. Flame-retardant sleeves can offer protection against sparks, but offer limited protection against burns when contacting hot surfaces. A maintenance employee was repairing a tine for a grapple. As he adjusted his body position, his left arm briefly came into contact with a recent weld, causing a burn to the forearm area. The employee was wearing a flame-retardant coat commonly used while performing hot work. He stated that he should have been wearing his leather PPE, which would have provided the proper protection. When selecting PPE, make sure you know the limitations of each form of PPE and that you select the appropriate PPE for each task.
A visual check of your PPE will ensure that it's in good condition. If you have tears in the illuminated fabric, if you have holes in your PPE, then it should be exchanged for new PPE.
The final important aspect of PPE is proper care, maintenance, and disposal. To assure PPE offers the best protection possible, be sure to never wear compromised or damaged PPE. Inspect your PPE at the beginning of every shift to ensure that it is in an acceptable condition. If it is not, it can leave you open for an injury. If PPE becomes damaged or compromised in any way, it must be discarded, and new PPE must be obtained. For safety footwear, according to the National Safety Council's Selection and User Guide for Protective Footwear, there are some situations where safety footwear must be replaced sooner, such as when physical damage is evident in the toe area of impact and compression-resistant shoes, and after an impact has occurred to a metatarsal or when the metatarsal guard is exposed. Did you know that you can also become injured while donning your PPE if it is not stored correctly? To prevent these unwanted exposures, it is required that all PPE be stored in lockers, break rooms, or otherwise out of the work environment. In addition, keep torching gloves clean and free of oil and grease so that they do not catch on fire while you are using them. While PPE is a basic component of any safety process, unfortunately, many injuries continue to occur due to failure to wear proper PPE. PPE can only protect you if you wear it properly, inspect it, and store it correctly each and every day. Remember that PPE is your last line of defense against the hazards in your work area. Please make sure to execute your company's PPE requirements on the job so that you can end each shift in the same condition that you started. And always follow the life-saving principles of SAFE. Standards, rules, and procedures your plant requires. Act responsibly. For yourself and coworkers. Every day, every task, every time. The home environment should be a safe place for you and your family. But did you know that more people are injured or killed at home than on the job? One of the main reasons is because people do not think about wearing PPE at home. PPE can protect you at home just as it can at work. So monitor home activities carefully and do not be afraid to use and suggest PPE when necessary. There are various tasks at home that can injure your hands, but hazards can be controlled or minimized with the appropriate gloves. So just as you would at work, wear appropriate gloves at home for proper protection. Tasks that often lead to eye injuries within the home include lawn mowing, weed eating, sawing, chipping, hammering, and chiseling, just to name a few. The use of safety glasses, goggles, special lenses, or a face shield can help minimize the risk of an eye injury. When purchasing this equipment, purchase from reputable sources. Do not take chances on poor quality equipment. Tools within the home can generate high levels of noise. The use of earplugs or earmuffs will minimize noise exposure. Foot injuries at home can occur for a variety of reasons. The use of boots or steel-toed shoes instead of tennis shoes, sandals, or flip-flops can help prevent foot injuries. This photo is of a steel-toed boot after being run over by a lawnmower. The wearer suffered some bruised toes, but they were still attached to his feet. Before you perform any task at home, evaluate the risk and assess your need for PPE. PPE is designed to protect you from injuries at work and at home, so be sure to protect yourself at all times.